welcome back to Bourbon Barrel Talk. I'm your host, Scott Minton. Today we are back in the Den of Thieves.
Party hard.
We got rid of Jared, brought back the legend. We got all kinds of great stuff going on.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yep.
I'm looking at the two most beautiful bottles I've ever seen in my life.
I don't know that they're the most beautiful bottles you've ever seen, but they're going to be probably the most tasty.
They're the
bottles.
oldest bottles I've seen, maybe. And
that's
the
probably true.
tastiest. Yes.
So, Legend, what'd you bring over, man?
So we have a 1976 Jim Beam, 100-month-old, 80 proof. Part of the bicentennial series. There were 6 different bottles with Norman Rockwell prints.
Okay.
I have been fortunate enough to acquire the entire set.
Right.
With boxes.
Okay.
Ooh. Oh.
Plus some extras, which is why we're drinking this one. And
in the infamous words of Uncle Charlie, spank my ass and call me Charlie.
And also have a early 90s Yellowstone 90 proof.
Gotcha.
If there was a
nice old Dusties.
I do love these old glass decanters.
Oh my gosh, yes.
They're just so cool.
It looks like Charles Lindbergh's on the Saturday Evening Post, I guess.
That reminds me of like...
That would be that, yes.
I'm going to equivalent that to like video games now versus like Sega Genesis and NES and Super Nintendo, where you had the box, you had the manual, you had the map,
Right.
you had the game.
Yep.
It just, there's a presentation value there that is lacking in today's bourbon world.
It's like Atari.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, it's like the Atari. It's like the OG.
I mean, that 70s and 80s whiskey is just, presentation's always on point for the most part.
Yep. So I can't wait to dive into these bad boys, try them.
I think a lot of that had to do with them trying to sell the whiskey.
That had a lot to do with it because whiskey had fell out of hand. You know, everybody was drinking gin and vodka and all that crap.
All that clear spirits.
They put them on all the various decanters for organizations.
Interesting.
No offense, it's your generation's fault.
Why is it
I
their
was
fault?
drinking it then. Not my fault.
I said it was your generation's fault. I didn't say it was your fault.
I know.
But I mean, think about all. That's what happened. The 1950s occurred, right? So the 1950s occurred, and people at that age, at that point, were like, "Hey, we don't want to drink what our parents drank, which was bourbon, whiskey, things like that, right? From the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s." So they wanted to come out with clear spirits. So that's when rum got popular, vodka got popular, and gin got popular. And then also that's when James Bond came out. So then everybody wanted a freaking martini.
And people like things like Mad Men.
Right.
That kind of era.
Yeah. So when all those cocktails came out, because they didn't want to drink what their parents drank, bourbon and whiskey just fell by the wayside. So this was kind of the resurgence of bourbon where they tried to do whatever they could to get it to sell. And that's why I think the Japanese and the Far East had kind of helped carry bourbon forward as we get to what we have today, which is the bourbon boom.
Though without the clear spirits coming into favor, we wouldn't have half the great decanters that are out there, like the scale car models, the 124 scale car models.
Even the Avon ones from the 80s were so cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There was all kinds of crazy stuff. I don't remember. I haven't even seen an old Avon one in forever. Like, I have no idea what kind of juice is in that stuff, whether it's tasty or not tasty, but like...
You would love the... I have a glass decanter of the Heaven Hill 6-year, the green label.
Right.
With a giant crystal style topper. It's square. Oh, it looks beautiful.
The Egyptian Mictors are my favorite of all decanters.
I've yet to find just a bottle or any of it.
So decanters, when I think of decanters, I think of clear glass, something to display your bourbon with.
Right.
This is the bottle itself that came off the shelf.
Correct.
So they actually had what they considered decanters or showman pieces right off the shelf
and most of them weren't glass. Like Beam was kind of the big one in glass. Most of the other places were like ceramics.
Turkey was
Wild Turkey had ceramics and
You've
things
got
like
some
that.
there.
So Beam was the authoritarian as far as like glass goes. I think Old Forester had some old glass decanters and things like that.
They had some ceramics at the beginning, but then they went to glass painted.
Yeah. So
if you go to Jim Beam, they have a display of hundreds of decanters.
Right. And almost all of them are glass. Very few were ceramic. Yeah. So, man, dude, the nose on this thing, dude. I tell people all the time, like, there's just something about a Dusty that if you've never had one, you've never drank one, it's just a different nose. It's a different taste. It's just leather and caramel and oak, and like there's just so many things. And I'm still in my mind trying to work out what 100 months is, because I work in banking terms. So it's always in like 12s, and 100 doesn't go into a 12 at all. So I'm like 96 months
It's
is
8
like
years
8 years and a couple of days,
8
a couple of
years and
months.
2 years is 24 months
Yeah.
and a month.
Right. So it's
yeah.
8 years and, like
Yeah.
you said, 4 months. That's right. So
Everything that you described it is on the nose, and it is like a rich bread.
yeah, there's a little bit of doughiness to it. Yep. I definitely get where you're picking up there. But for me, I wouldn't necessarily. There's a doughiness, like, but I don't know that I would call it bread as much as I would, like, I don't know. It's got some finesse to it, like almost like a bagel or something like that. But man, I tell you what, there's just something about these noses.
It's got a little bit of leather, more leather to me, but it just tastes wonderful.
Yeah, 1976. So this is older than everybody in the room except for the legend.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
No, it's only 1 year.
Hey,
It's
I'm
only
alive.
1 year older than me.
I'm alive. That's all that matters.
He's like, I got to drink
right.
more shit
Yeah,
than the three of you fuckers combined.
I think the last time we talked, I think we all said that we want to make it to at least Steven's age.
Yes.
We're all big slobs.
I don't know, Carl. The way you and I are trajectory in life, we may get 60 if we're lucky.
If I make it to 70, I'm going to be happy.
So, I've always said that I don't want to be 70 if I'm like one of those people that can't walk or do anything
That's
else.
a beam
or something like
decanter,
that.
the elephant.
The elephant? Okay.
Is a beam.
Now that's got to be ceramic.
It is.
I was about to
It
say
is.
that's got to be ceramic. So
Is that the political one?
yeah.
No,
the
that's the
Oh, it's
football
not?
one.
Oh, okay, it's a
it's got a
different
football, but it looks political. It looks like it's got the
My wife wouldn't. My wife wouldn't let
Republicans.
me have the political one because it was the donkey as a clown, though.
Oh,
Of that time
It's
frame.
interesting that you say that is the Norman Rockwell painting on the decanter there. Was lucky enough to inherit my grandfather's collection of Norman Rockwell glasses, and that's immediately I knew exactly what that looked like.
so 80 proof. I will say these things drink it proof.
Oh, yeah.
Like they're not like, but there's just so much flavor. Like you get caramel, you get leather, you get oak, you get everything that you
But
get.
it's-
I think of a traditional bourbon.
It's not like a modern one where it just loses it.
No,
Better wood in the barrels.
yeah,
You know, they were older trees,
mean-
so they got a lot more flavor coming in to the liquid.
right.
I'm sure there's some virgin growth in there.
You know, you're the first person I've heard say that, and that makes a ton more sense because bourbon, the boom today. I mean, trees aren't as old as what they were back
No.
then.
They
They probably were cutting down 50 and 60-year-old trees versus today we're cutting down as soon as they get old enough. 16, 18,
The
20 years.
demand is so high.
The
for
demand
it
is so
now.
high.
I think
right.
I think it's probably it's also more genetically modified trees to grow quicker for the demand. At least in the pine, like
See, man,
pine
now,
and all
now
that.
you're thinking some GMO stuff, and I can't even wrap my mind around the fact.
Well,
that
I am
they-
maintenance, so I work in a 100-year-old
So they can
building.
make trees grow faster.
Yes, they can genetically modify them to grow faster.
I think-
Certain trees.
I think he's hit the sauce a little too much tonight.
I'm about to say I think he's had too much to drink. But listen, it
can
would not
happen.
surprise me. We can grow babies in a tube. I mean, we can do all kinds of crazy
I mean,
stuff.
look what we did to corn alone.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, just look at the apple. The apple is probably the most prevalent thing that you can go back. You look at a 1950s apple versus an apple today. They're like twice the size.
if you come up on
And they're coated in the wax that comes in the stores to make them look more appealing as well.
Well, they coat them in the wax so that way they last longer from harvest to eating. right?
Transportation.
It's transportation more than anything else. But like just the general size and how sweet. Like even as me as a kid, I remember grabbing. It wasn't even a crab apple. It was like a I can't think of the name. It was like a Braeburn or something
Had
like
a
that.
high
on our
acidity
grandpa.
to the apple, yeah.
But it wasn't as sweet. Like apples now are bigger and sweeter and more robust, whereas apples, even in the early '80s, were totally different. And I can only imagine. I mean, I wasn't alive in the '60s or '70s, but
What was it like back then in the Stone
But I mean,
Age?
I didn't study apples as a
but I mean,
child, so
but in the '70s, do you remember apples being like super sweet, or do you remember them being more tart?
I have no recollection.
You don't no
whatsoever.
recollection? Okay, that's fair enough.
We have two trees, what they would call heirloom apples now. They're
Okay.
from the original orchard, either planted somewhere between the 1880s to 1920s, somewhere
Gotcha.
in there. We have two of the original trees still around.
Legend was too busy drinking
And-
quality bourbon before we were alive than
When
worry
you-
about apples.
When you look at those apples, they're probably half the size of a modern apple,
Right.
and nowhere near the same shape. It's more of a rounded apple.
Wait, speaking of that legend, when did you start drinking bourbon?
mid-70s.
Mid '70s. Jesus Christ, You got all the good shit.
Yeah.
I drank a lot of other stuff along the way too. But
Oh, I'm sure you did. But like I said, no offense to you, but a lot of people in your generation made bourbon like
I mean, my grandpa had a bar, but
second class citizen.
there's still 3 bottles of Jim Beam left from that bar from the early 80s.
Man.
So
The nose is rich. The taste is rich.
Now, all these Dusties still have a weird funk nose, but man, I'm gonna tell you, still they're just sweet caramel. Like there's just so much other things that
a
go
little bit
with
of
it.
molasses in there for me.
Yeah, I don't know. Man.
and I don't care what the distillers would tell you. I am just dead on certain that there was more care put into the making of bourbon back in the day because there wasn't the pressure to make it.
Right.
Oh yeah, they weren't
So-
trying to pump it out. Yeah.
So whatever they did with higher quality. I think.
Well, I think the water, even when you think about the
that's-
water table, right? Like, I mean, water wasn't polluted like it is today. Like we carbon, we put chlorine, we put fluoride, we put. I mean, there's so many things that we do to our
It's so
water, and then
filtered.
then even though they're filtering it to reverse osmosis or whatever the water is that they use to make that,
Right.
Think they didn't have to do that back then. Back then, the water was pure. Like it came straight off the limestone beds, and like. A lot of times, most of those places probably
had
have
your well water.
have well
Yeah,
waters,
yeah.
you know, in some of those off-market places.
If you look at Castle and Key and Oak Crow, which are right next to each other, or the old Taylor Distillery and the Oak Crow, it's literally
Isn't that a limestone
a
bed?
spring, yeah,
Yeah, it's a limestone
bed
spring.
Yeah.
So
and it's all the water either coming from the lake or the stream coming next to it, or the reservoir, the little reservoir they got.
So I have to believe that water had probably one of the biggest things at that point. And plus, like you said, like and GMO probably has a lot to do with it too, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
corn.
Oh, yeah.
Like think about how much more concentrated the flavor of
We
corn
have
must have been
messed
when it
with
was smaller.
everything
Yeah.
known to mankind.
So man, just my mind's blown just from today thinking about the fact that bourbon has been affected by GMO.
Well, it's like I was reading one the other day. I forget which distillery. It's like with non-GMO corn. I went, is that a thing? Actually, I think it was this one.
Not to nerd out, but that's one of the big aspects in the movie Logan, the final Hugh Jackman Wolverine film.
Really?
Yes, about how the GMOs in food actually stopped the mutagens in the DNA from producing more mutants. So the mutants started dying off because of what they were eating, and even in the film itself, he hooks up with a farmer who's being kind of terrorized by this group of
I don't remember
rich
any of that
owners.
about the movie. I must have been drunk or just
Dude,
forgot all
that's
that.
one of-
It's a
I've
great
ever seen that
movie. I
movie.
remember
one of
seeing
my
it. Yeah.
top 10, possibly top 6 films.
It was a good movie. I remember it being a good movie, and I remember enjoying it. I just don't remember that plot line at all.
I think it was.
I remember them going to the farm with
It
the
wasn't
little girl.
political, but yeah, it was
Yeah.
just kind of that idea that the food is killing us, and maybe possibly that's why his healing factor isn't what it used to be either.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't remember
I'm
that.
pretty sure Bullet is all non-GMO corn.
Is it really?
Still.
Bullet?
So with this
And
particular,
it's all sourced right outside their distillery.
we haven't even
Yeah.
talked about the
Really?
bourbon yet.
I would have never guessed that with the whole.
Yeah, they
Especially
buy,
since
they
they
buy
moved.
very close to their distillery, all of their corn.
So
yeah,
was,
their new distillery is like middle of cornfields.
Yeah.
Nothing else around there.
was this a bottle that you purchased or one that you inherited? Is there a history behind that bottle?
The Jim Beam,
Yeah,
it's one I purchased.
you purchased. Do you know kind of roughly ballpark what it might have been back in the day?
Price wise,
Yeah, yeah.
$6.99, $7.99. It could have been.
Did
much
it
more than
hurt
that.
your wallet? I guess
No.
is
Oh,
what. It
well,
Oh, back then it was probably a premium product.
back then,
Yeah.
I mean, probably
It was probably about
was a high price bottle back then.
But you weren't going out and like buying several bottles at a time, like say people do.
No, he
now.
bought that. He,
He
bought,
bought
this
this
bottle in the last
recently.
couple of years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't hear the story.
He didn't buy it in 1976.
No, I got probably 12 or 15 of these that I bought just this year.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I need to follow his lead on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but definitely different.
Carl's gonna bitch out and be like, "Tell me what to do, and I'll do it."
It's one of those things. I found one and loved it, so I've found more.
So,
As I told Scott, I bought 2 today
yeah.
from 1974.
1974. Even older, man.
I've had an 83, and the 83 doesn't even taste like.
No, it doesn't. That's what I'm saying. It's crazy. I've had an 81. I've had an 80. I think the 76 might be the oldest one I've had, but like,
Yeah.
I mean, they all they taste similar, but none of them taste the same. But but that's the way bourbon is, right? Like even if you bought a bottle of Woodford today and bought another bottle of Woodford, they're not going to taist the same. They're going to taste similar, but they're not going to taste the same.
This is the first dusty. Was it the dusty
No.
terminology?
You had my 83.
Yeah, and you have my 94 Wild Turkey.
I
would say this is definitely dustier than the dusty ones you've had, but yeah, you've had some dusty.
More dust.
More dust.
My wife's 50th high school reunion is this weekend, so I have a 72 to take.
There you go. Well, that'd be a hell of a party.
Where's it at?
Washington, Indiana.
Oh, yes, I'm familiar with Washington. Do you need a driver?
So this Yellowstone, which was the next one, and we put this on early 90s, right?
Right.
Early 90s.
That's the best I know.
Very similar nose as far as like it's got some sweet, some caramel, a little bit of leather,
A little bit of tobacco.
a little bit of tobacco.
I'm a fan of modern Yellowstone, so I'm excited to see how this differs. And
I'm gonna say it's got just a touch of like that instead of less caramel, more like your Werther's original type smell on the nose.
Toffee.
Like toffee, and a little bit of just a touch of vanilla, just a touch.
Yeah. Sort of like a
I
Heath
like
bar
that
or something.
distinction between like butterscotch and toffee. Toffee doesn't have that
I think
lingering
toffee's-
sweetness.
Yeah, but it's richness. It's got some richness
Yeah.
to it.
I think it's a little more depth.
Oh, wow, this is so good.
After the Yellowstone me and Scott's had here recently. Oh, this is completely different and it's so good.
Oh, this is very, very, very tasty. Man, that is weird. Like I would have not. I don't think I've ever had an older Yellowstone other than like I had one time from probably like the 1970s, like late 70s, early 80s. But tastes totally different than this. Like I remember it being more bitter, like more high rye, more spice, more punch to the tongue, than this is.
This is really full flavor.
It really is. Got some nice, like I said, a little bit of that toffee, like that Werther's original, a little bit of leather.
It's still earthy.
Yeah.
So I think
Get some tobacco notes,
yeah,
and it's not like a sweet tobacco. It's like your standard. Yeah.
I don't know why I keep wanting to think molasses for some strange reason, or just
Yeah. So molasses, toffee, like both rich sweetnesses. One's a little less sweet, but
kind of a thicker
Yeah.
sugar.
which to me would be
but look at the legs on that thing.
It just stops.
it
The
doesn't
color is
go
really
anywhere.
nice too.
Yeah, I mean it hugs that glass.
This is wonderful.
You're welcome.
Did you like my?
Thank
trick?
you.
Did you like my? Did you like that trick I did there, Steven? The roll on the Glencairn.
I just want to put like the visual of the meme of Wayne and Garth going, "We're not worthy. We're not worthy."
For sure. No, thank you 100%. But
I
this is-
disagree. If you like bourbon, the best thing you can do with it is share it.
right.
Agreed.
And I have no problem sharing anything I have.
Well,
fully agree
the
with
Den
that.
of Thieves. Cheers to you.
Cheers.
Hardy
Cheers.
har.
Salud. Man, it's weird to me how Dusties can be so much different than the stuff that's made today.
Oh yeah, it's 100% different
It
to
just
me.
sits on you.
Yeah.
Just plop, and just get all of that nice.
Well, that's the thing. You get a Kentucky hug from a 90 proof. Like
Yeah.
you don't get that Kentucky hug typically from a 90 proofers anymore.
Well, and to me, 90 proofs today lose a lot of their lackluster. They
Right.
don't have much flavor up front or back palate.
right.
Where
But I
this
think a lot
just-
of these are older though.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's part of it.
I mean, it's like the wild turkey. I hate to go back to
Can I
wild
see
turkey.
the
but
bottle?
Nowadays, they try to stick to 7.5 year, where it was 8 year or
Right.
older.
Right.
So, I mean,
And that's probably the big caveat with a lot of this stuff is the fact that
They
as
could-
bourbon's boom has happened. I mean, just think. I mean, 2-3 years ago, you could get Heaven Hill 6 year. It was an age stated product. Everything. Now it's 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
Like they got rid of the age statement because they couldn't keep up with the demand on the 6 year. Like it's just crazy how much things have changed. I'm so glad that Eagle Rare went back to the age statement on the 10 year because for a long time, 4 or 5 years, it was just Eagle Rare.
well, I have a 2015 bottle that I bought on my bachelor party. I was like, it's not an age statement.
Yeah.
And we just bought one this past Saturday. It was age stated.
Right.
So,
This just has a nice little notation on the label that says "fully aged under the supervision of the U.S. government."
Well, everything was aged under the supervision
Bottle and
of the
Bond
I
warehouse.
fucking realize that, Scott, but I'm just saying
Bottle and Bond Act. No.
It's not
it
bottle,
is.
but it's not bottle and
It's
bond.
not, yeah.
No.
Still, yeah, I thought that was kind of a cool little statement.
Yeah.
But I
Because
mean,
that's 1897 when the Bottle and Bond Act came around. But
Right.
the fact that it doesn't say
I'm
that.
guessing that's
it's not
probably
bottle
what,
and
a
bond.
6 to 7, 8 year,
I'm going to say probably 6 to 7 year old bourbon. I wouldn't say that it's much more old than that.
which nowadays is probably.
And the only reason I say that is because of the color. I don't think it's got enough richness to it to be much more than about 6 or 7 years. But I think also, if I remember correctly, Yellowstone has always used a char level 3.
yeah.
I don't think they went char 4. So, I don't
It's
know.
lovely.
This is.
I don't even want to put water in it. I
There's
just don't
no
No,
want
no,
to.
no. There's no
I
reason to
just
put water in
wouldn't.
these.
Yeah.
I would probably, we'd have to Rochambeau. I'd have to kick you in the nuts and I'd go first.
Yeah. I just
If
come
Jared
behind-
were here,
I would just smack you.
So, yep.
there is really nothing better than drinking bourbon with a good group, a good crew.
All right. These are both
Absolutely.
great bottles, but we got to pick. Who's the winner?
As much as I love that beam, that Yellowstone. to
Okay,
me,
you're Yellowstone. All right.
Don't go to me yet. I'm still deciding.
You're still deciding?
Yep, I'm still deciding.
I'm going to give, and it's the slightest edge. I'm going to give a slightest edge to the Beam. Steven?
I'm a beam.
Beam?
I love the beam.
You were
just-
Yellowstone.
I'm going to go Yellowstone too.
You're Yellowstone.
It's just that
just
little more
split party.
burn at the back.
And I think
for
a
me.
lot of that is just because I've had more Yellowstone, modern Yellowstone, than I have like modern
Yeah.
Beam. So it just, that's kind of.
So the
what I
rye
mean.
pop is what won you on this
Oh,
one.
yeah.
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 I love that rye pop.
I do too. I do too. But man, there's just something about these old beams, man, that they just hit different. They're just sweet and subtle, and there's just so much flavor profile that comes
Oh,
through on them.
I love that beam. And that's way different than my 83 beam I have.
Right.
I prefer that actually over my 83 way more.
And I love the Yellowstone, and I'm going to be really sad when that bottle's gone.
Was that your last one?
It's the only one I've ever
It's the only
had.
one you've ever had?
Was
You're
this
gonna have
one
to
you
go
found
looking.
this year, or did you have
No,
this for a while?
I've had that for like 2 years.
It seems like
I've been very careful with it.
the beam, the beams
but I-
are very.
gingerly drinking it.
Well,
Yeah.
mostly I've used it as a bottle share. I don't drink it at home.
Right.
I bring it to places like this.
Right.
It seems like the beams are way more common than. I think that's the first Yellowstone Dusty I've seen in a while.
It's been a hot minute since I've seen an older Yellowstone.
Yeah,
Like I said,
agreed.
I have one. I want to say it was probably late 70s, early 80s, and it was delicious. But like I don't remember it tasting like that. That's what it's just so weird how. But your memory also will cloud judgment, right?
Yeah.
Depending on how much you've drank on a certain night or anything else.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
But those things definitely hit different, man.
I mean, the three Dusties, the three brands I see most is Ofo, Wild Turkey, and Jim Beam of the Dusties.
I'll tell you, dude,
And
one-
Ezra Brooks would be also
Don't
there.
sleep on them, dude. The old school JW Dance are delicious.
See, I seen one the other day and passed it.
Dude, the old school JW Dance are delicious. They really are.
J.W. Dance.
Yeah.
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 Which that distillery's back in business, isn't it?
So the Dant family, yes, Dant Crossing, Wally
Okay.
Dant, yes, he opened Monk's Row, which is
Log Still Distillery.
Log Still Distillery. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but yeah, he's back open. I hope to God and pray that is it Lux Row that owns, or no, it's Heaven Hill that owns.
It's Heaven
JW
Hill
Dant.
that owns
So
JW
I hope
Dant.
that they give him that name back. I really do. I hope they sell it back to him for way less than what it's worth, just because of the fact that I think it's a legacy, right thing.
Oh, yeah.
More than anything else.
It's just the right thing to do.
I agree. And the Shapiro brothers have made more than enough money in bourbon that
No, right. Yeah.
they can sell that back to those guys for pennies on the dollar and they'd be okay. So, all right. So that's our episode of Bourbon Barrel Talk. If you want to find us, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and the Twitter. You can email us at bourbonbarreltalk@gmail.com. We enjoyed this great 1976 Beam and this early 90s Yellowstone. They were delicious, delectable. Thank you to the legend for joining us again. And if you want to, make sure you hit the subscribe button. That way you get our episodes as soon as they hit. This is Scott and the Den of Thieves and the Legend signing off. Peace out.
See ya.
Cheers and salute.